Welcome to The Explainer. You know, every single day, a practically infinite amount of words flashes right in front of our eyes. I'm talking messages, snappy headlines, comments, those endless short video captions. We're literally drowning in words. But as we keep scrolling through this endless sea of text, it kind of brings up a pretty profound question. Are we actually still capable of sitting with an idea long enough to truly understand it? Like, what exactly do we lose when a society just stops reading? Okay, let's dive right into this. There is a massive, stark difference between simply seeing words and actually reading. Because reading isn't just staring at text, right? It demands time, it demands silence, and it requires your mind to stay anchored in one single place, even when a million little notifications are basically begging for your attention. Listen, if you've been finding it super difficult to read lately, I really want to assure you right now, you're not less intelligent, and you absolutely aren't lazy. You're just trapped in a digital environment that's meticulously engineered to interrupt your attention before any deep thought can even take root.
To put this into perspective, consider this brilliant metaphor from the source material. It says, it's like trying to dig a well by moving every 30 seconds. I mean, think about it. If you do that, sure, you might touch a whole lot of dirt, but there is no way you're ever going to strike water. Step by step, our minds have just been trained to crave constant novelty over any real depth. But, hey, here's the good news. Focus? It's a muscle. If you've trained it to jump around all day, you can absolutely rebuild it to stay put. And why is that? Because unlike your social media feed, a physical book doesn't auto-refresh. It never gets impatient. It just patiently waits for you, the reader.
So this brings us to a crucial takeaway. Reading is literally learning to think. Now, we all know we can pull up a piece of information, like a date, a quick definition, a historical fact, in 3 seconds on our phones? But finding a fact is definitely not the same thing as understanding it. Reading actually forces you to track a full argument, to spot contradictions, and to weigh the consequences. A truly great book won't just hand you easy, bite-sized answers. Instead, it actively trains you on how to formulate much better, deeper questions.
And because of this dynamic, when you read, you aren't just some empty vessel passively receiving words off a screen. No, you are an active builder. Think about it for a second. When a novelist describes a creepy, dusty old house, you are the one painting those colors in your mind. You're the one hearing the creaking floorboards. Or, say you're tackling a history book. You have to actively track the author's logic and decide for yourself if their conclusion actually holds up. You are participating in building that meaning.
Now, why does this matter? Well, this active reading skill translates directly into your daily, real-world life. The capacity to sustain a complex, nuanced thought that doesn't just stay magically locked inside the pages of a book. It's the exact same mental muscle that protects you when you need to parse out a complex contract before signing on the dotted line. It's how you spot distorted, sensationalized news, or how you successfully pitch a really nuanced idea at work without losing your train of thought halfway through. Most importantly, though, it helps you see right past all those empty catchphrases floating around, which basically protects you from the people who are trying to do your thinking for you.
So that brings us to the big, massive question at the heart of this. What exactly does society lose? Look, when we lose our collective ability to sit down and read attentively, we cross a pretty dangerous line. We start becoming incredibly vulnerable to these easy, hyper-short explanations for incredibly complex political and economic problems. And let's be real, reality is rarely that simple. But when our attention span shrinks, those absolute, bite-sized answers start looking very, very seductive.
In fact, when a society just completely stops reading, it loses 3 incredibly profound things: memory, freedom, and imagination. Let's start with memory. Books, essays, old letters, they are our conversations with the past. When a society just completely forgets its own history, you better believe terrible old proposals are going to reemerge, disguised as brand new, shiny ideas. Reading allows us to sit down in conversation with the people who lived way before us, which ensures we don't end up repeating old errors and acting like they're huge discoveries.
Okay, now what about freedom? Well, true freedom relies really heavily on critical thinking. And to be clear, critical thinking doesn't just mean cynically doubting absolutely everything you hear. It means knowing how to ask the exact right questions. Questions like, who is actually stating this? Based on what evidence? And maybe most importantly, what was left out? If we stop developing our own independent thoughts through deep reading, we just end up relying on pre-packaged ideas. We outsource our thinking to influencers or algorithms that speak to us with this absolute, unquestionable confidence.
And finally, we have imagination. Reading constantly asks us, what would happen if this specific idea was applied to the very end? Literature literally forces us to step into the shoes of characters whose lives, daily choices, and deep pains are completely different from our own. It shatters the boundaries of our own reality. Because a society without imagination, that's a society that can only repeat what already exists. It becomes totally incapable of conceiving something entirely new or, something better.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're probably sitting there saying, okay, this all makes total sense, but honestly, every time I try to read lately, I just get distracted and give up. If that's you, I want you to know something right now. The problem is absolutely not your intelligence. The problem is the starting line. So many people think they just hate reading, but the reality is they were introduced to it in a totally terrible way. It is literally like trying to run a full 26-mile marathon on your very first day of training. Of course you're going to fail. And then you feel guilty, and you end up thinking you just aren't built for it.
So the real issue is the huge contrast between how we often start and how we actually should start. Usually we start out of obligation, right? We force ourselves to pick up some heavy, dense classic because we feel guilty or we think it's some sort of IQ test. But actually, scratch that. The correct approach is curiosity. You should strictly follow your genuine interest with absolutely zero guilt. If a book doesn't hook you, drop it. Just put it down. The perfect first book isn't on some snobby must-read list. It's literally just the one that makes you genuinely want to turn the page.
So how exactly do we fix this starting line? Well, I've got a radical yet incredibly simple 3-step solution for you to help rebuild that focus. Step 1, choose out of pure curiosity. Pick a topic you genuinely actually care about. Step 2, read just 5 pages. Seriously, lower the bar so much that it's completely effortless to succeed. And step 3, put the phone physically in another room. We're not doing this because we hate technology, but because we need to completely kill that mental negotiation. If your phone is sitting right there in arm's reach, every single difficult sentence just becomes an immediate excuse to go check a notification.
And this brilliantly illustrates the crazy math behind small habits. Let's say you push it to just 10 pages a day. 10 pages? That sounds like absolutely nothing. But 10 pages a day becomes a full 300-page book in a single month. That's huge. The goal at the very beginning isn't to read as much as humanly possible, speed reading style. The goal is just teaching your highly distracted brain how to calmly return to one single task, day after day. And this is the key takeaway here, the habit is built by the return. You do not need to understand every single word on the page. You definitely don't need a perfect aesthetic reading ritual with a special cup of tea and a fancy velvet armchair. Just simply marking a cool passage or internalizing one core idea when you finally close the book, that completely transforms reading. It changes it from a stressful performance test into a really relaxing, active dialogue between you and the author.
Ultimately, this all brings us to the absolute heart of the matter. Preserving the act of reading simply takes time. This isn't about blindly rejecting modern technology or pretending the internet is some passing fad. It's about recognizing that truly understanding a complex issue, deeply listening to someone else's perspective, and actually having the courage to change our own minds, those things inherently, unavoidably require time. And a book is one of the very few places left in our modern world that freely offers us that kind of uninterrupted time.
So I think it's time we redefine what we even mean by this word. What exactly is a reader? Honestly, a reader is simply someone who decides to return to the page. We really need to strip away all those elitist labels. You absolutely do not need a massive mahogany library or an advanced degree in the classics to call yourself a reader. It's an identity that is completely 100% accessible to anyone, anywhere, who is simply willing to sit with the quiet silence of a book and just see where it takes them.
Which brings us right to our final question for you today. Which book are you gonna start today? I really challenge you to pick a book, literally any book at all, that provokes a question in your mind. Just try reading a few pages today. And hey, drop your choice in the comments below to help inspire some other people who are also trying to rebuild their focus. Because at the end of the day, a society stops thinking when it loses the patience to sit with questions. And the only thing separating a hopelessly distracted mind from a completely life-changing idea is the simple gesture of turning a page.